At the climax of a sensational 1935 trial at London's Old Bailey, the jury returned two very different verdicts. 37-year-old Alma Rattenbury was cleared of all charges in the murder of her husband. Her 18-year-old lover, George Stoner, was found guilty and sentenced to hang. Logically, the story should end there. Instead, within days of walking free, the legally innocent woman took her own life in a brutal public suicide. Meanwhile, the convicted murderer became the center of a massive, sympathetic national movement. Citizens across Britain spontaneously organized to save the teenage killer from the gallows. Petitions flooded the government, eventually gathering more than 300,000 signatures demanding his life be spared. To see how the public reactions so thoroughly inverted the reality of a murder conviction and drove a free woman to her death, we have to look closely at the people involved. The victim was Francis Rattenbury. He was a highly successful Canadian architect, a man of elite societal status who designed iconic landmarks like the British Columbia Parliament buildings. His wife, Alma, was a musician and songwriter nearly 30 years his junior. After a scandal surrounding their marriage alienated them from Canadian high society, the couple fled across the Atlantic, settling into a dreary retirement in a seaside English town. To help manage their Bournemouth home, the couple hired a local teenager. His name was George Stoner, and he was brought on to work as their chauffeur and handyman. The events that followed were catastrophic. Understanding how the law and public opinion reached entirely opposite conclusions requires stepping inside the isolating, toxic pressure cooker of the Rattenbury home. The reality of the Villa Madeira was bleak. Francis was severely depressed, heavily reliant on alcohol, and impotent. Alma found herself trapped in an emotionally desolate environment, isolated from the bustling resort town right outside her door. Seeking an escape, Alma initiated a passionate affair with the teenage Stoner. According to later testimony, Francis actually knew about the relationship and quietly tolerated it, largely due to his own failing health and their massive age gap. But the arrangement quickly destabilized. Stoner developed a heavy cocaine habit, and his infatuation with Alma mutated into a blinding, possessive jealousy. He became increasingly volatile at any sign of affection between Alma and her husband. On the night of March 24, 1935, Stoner snapped. He crept up behind Francis as he slept in an armchair and bludgeoned him repeatedly with a heavy carpenter's mallet, fracturing his skull. The immediate aftermath was pure chaos. When the police arrived, they found Alma intoxicated and heavily sedated by a doctor. In a frantic, desperate bid to protect her young lover, she falsely confessed to the attack. Days later, Francis succumbed to his injuries. The investigation then took a sharp pivot when Stoner drunkenly confessed the truth to the family's housekeeper. Facing a dead man and a maze of contradictory statements, the police formally charged both Alma and Stoner with murder. The physical crime was a straightforward act of jealous rage. However, the false confessions moved the focus from physical evidence to a question of moral character. To avoid local bias, the trial was moved to London. It instantly triggered an intense national media frenzy, drawing thousands of eager spectators. Inside the courtroom, the legal reality was clear. Forensic evidence and testimony proved that Stoner had acted entirely alone. He had even worn gloves to hide his fingerprints on the weapon, clearly proving the attack was entirely premeditated. Outside the courtroom, a completely different reality took hold. The tabloids ignored the physical evidence entirely. Instead, they weaponized Alma's age, her wealth, and her infidelity, reducing the participants to crude, sensational caricatures. This narrative branded Alma a scarlet woman. In the eyes of the public, she was a sexual predator who had exploited her wealth and status to corrupt an impressionable working-class youth. The jury in the courtroom was evaluating the facts of a murder. The public outside was evaluating a woman's right to transgress social norms. The jury's verdict was swift. Alma stepped out of the Old Bailey completely cleared of all charges, but her freedom was hollow. A vicious mob waited by the doors, loudly booing her as she tried to leave. The crowd's hostility had been validated by the justice system itself. In his closing remarks, the trial judge officially condemned Alma's behavior, stating she had an abnormal sexual appetite and no moral conscience. She was legally innocent, but utterly destroyed. Crushed by the weight of public vilification and overwhelmed by grief over Stoner's impending execution, Alma purchased a knife and traveled to the banks of the River Stour. Standing alone at the water's edge, she stabbed herself in the chest 6 times and drowned. She left behind a final note expressing despair that she could not save her young lover's life. Following her death, the massive public sympathy campaign for George Stoner reached its peak. Bowing to the immense pressure, the Home Secretary stepped in and commuted his death sentence to life in prison. Stoner ended up serving only 7 years. He was released early to join the British Army and fight in World War II, eventually returning home and living a quiet, private life until his death in the year 2000. The mismatch between the law and the public mood left Alma without a path forward. She survived the justice system, but was ultimately destroyed by a society that demanded a moral conviction the jury wouldn't provide.